Welcome to Discover La Jolla, where we shine a light on the jewel of San Diego, La Jolla, California. I'm here with Mark Leonard from Grand Prix Classics.
Good evening.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. We're very happy to have you in. I know you've been in before, but we're excited to dive a little deeper and learn more about your history of kind of how you started to where you are today.
Happy to share some stories with you.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go back in time to when you were a little boy, and what inspired you to be in the automotive industry, and kind of carry that with you throughout your career.
I think it was mainly my father's influences. He owned some interesting sports cars. His hobby was going to the automobile races, and then, of course, growing up in Europe.
And your father, was he in the automotive industry as well, or was he more so using that as a hobby?
No, he was not in the automotive industry. He was an educator, but his interests were sports cars, photography, and automobile races.
And I know you have a history with photography as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
I was fortunate enough already at age 18, along with my brother, to get involved in photography and get hired to work in Formula One for 4.5 years.
That's so exciting, and that's such a really rich history to be a part of as well. What years were you involved with Formula One?
What many consider the golden years. I was there from 1973 through 1976. I was employed by Brunswick Films out of London, which was sponsored by Philip Morris out of Lausanne, or Marlboro, which sponsored the McLaren Formula One team, and that was the James Hunt, Niki Lauda era, of which later the movie Rush was made about.
That's so cool. So what was your role within that? So you worked with them for 4 years. So tell us a little bit about what you actually did photography wise, and where your photos ended up.
Well, Brunswick's role for Marlboro was to do documentary films of Marlboro to justify the sponsorship, and of the Formula One circus for the whole season. And my role, starting at age 18, was to drive the vans, to help load the camera magazines, to aid the cinematographers in their task, and to take the still photos. So all the behind-the-scenes photography I did with a still camera. And there were some exciting events, doing interviews in Monaco on the yacht of the drivers and the celebrities, Elizabeth Taylor, James Garner, who was active in motorsports, drove a small motorcycle at Monza with the photographer sitting backwards on the back filming the driver's foot race, did an interview with Francois Sever in Le Castellet on the French Riviera of his life. And so there was a lot of things where, as a youngster, you're involved in behind the scenes, and these are your idols, or these stars. And later you pinch yourself and say, I was there.
Yeah, that's so cool, and that's a really great memory to have, and really great experience. So what made you kind of step away from photography and get into opening up the dealerships and more of like the collections?
Yeah, that's interesting. You have to think that the photography was a little bit of an apprenticeship. It was a little bit of a university study. At that time, we weren't well paid. You were there for the passion and the enjoyment of the sport. And I had the ambition to own a business and do things, and also I was an American that had lived in Europe my entire life from birth, with an American father, English mother. And it was time, I think, to explore living in the U.S. So that combination of wanting to run a business and live in the U.S. motivated me to move to San Diego and to start here fresh, and eventually to open my business.
And you started originally in Germany, is that correct?
Actually, yes. Yeah. You're getting into the details, but I remember them. My father had interesting sports cars, and he asked me to go into the city of Frankfurt, near where we lived, and get an appraisal on his older Jaguar. And I got into sort of a discussion on its value, and the gentleman said, well, I'm not going to win this argument with you on the value of this car. Mm-hmm. Would you like a job? And he turned out to be the owner of the insurance company that happened to come out, and not the salesperson or a representative. And he also was in a network of people that owned several car dealerships. And so I said, well, what would the job be? And it was to get into car sales. And so I was traveling every other weekend within Europe to the Formula One races, and I was taking night classes for the university. And so I started working for him about 3.5 or 4 days a week. And so I seemed to have some natural ability at it. And then within 6 months, other people approached me if I wanted to work for them and then to open a business. And so I had a financial partner, and we opened a business. And at that time, we catered primarily to the American military overseas. And so we could get them an automobile with U.S. specifications that after their tour of duty, they could ship it to the U.S. We catered, we did wine tours, travel things to the medieval cities, up the Rhine. And being a wine connoisseur, I would guide the wine tours. But that was our captive market. And so there I had my first business for that marketplace.
And then you decided to move back to the U.S., kind of start your business here in La Jolla. So how is that different than having a business over in Germany?
Yeah, well, it ultimately, as I said earlier, the goal was to move to San Diego and here. And my parents had purchased a home here. So I knew ultimately they would retire here. And I came 10 years before them. But it took me, I think I was unemployed for a year, working odd jobs, getting to know people, getting familiar. You couldn't just jump from one country to the next and just open a business. And I had to be familiar with the industry. But eventually I met people in La Jolla, and I actually worked one place, Motoring Classics, and I met John Brophy, who owned that business. And John was quite well known in La Jolla community, from a well-to-do family. He had a beautiful home in the Muirlands. And he introduced me to some of his friends, and we would have breakfast at Harry's coffee shop in the morning. And through that network of people, I wouldn't say they mentored me, but they gave me good advice, as they were older than me. And they were forming National Bank of La Jolla. They were going to be the advisory board and the board of directors. And they knew I wanted to have a business, and they believed in me. And so I put together a business plan with the intent of going to see the new bank. And Harry Rudolph's mother, in her 80s, was the cashier, and she gave me a reference on one of the napkins from Harry's coffee shop. I went to see Mike West at National Bank of La Jolla, which was in that red brick building on the corner of Fay and Silverado. And I got a loan, $50,000 unsecured, based on my business plan, and opened my business in Miramar. And that's how I got started. And I look back and think, wow, interesting. People believed in me, but I did have a plan, and I then had to work 7 days a week to make the business work.
Yeah, and you did have passion too for it.
Yes.
Something that you really wanted to do, and I'm sure your investors or people that helped you along the way saw that and wanted to invest in you and help you succeed too.
Yes, right. And even just their advice was helpful. And I tried today to pass some of that along, that same behavior or gift of helping other people have their own success and follow their dreams, because people helped me.
What was I'm sure you got a lot of really great advice, but what was some of the best advice that you were given when you were first starting out?
I think it was a little advice on the business plan and the belief in me as an individual that I could keep going and try to do this. And then I'd had some success in Germany before, which helped. Mm-hmm. And it was that dedication and push to not quit.
Because if you were to quit, you wouldn't be where you are today. And you have such a beautiful showroom over in La Jolla now. And it also kind of acts as a museum, and it has a lot of memorabilia. Tell us a little bit about the showroom and some of your favorite pieces in it.
Well, there's a little bit before that, because when I first was in La Jolla, that was the Unicorn movie theater. And the building next door to it was the Chart House restaurant chain's offices. And if you even look in there today in the back, you'll up high in the upper level, you'll see all the woodwork and the wood theme of the restaurant. And so I was approached by another investor in early 1985 at my Miramar store because he had heard I wanted to try to buy the Ferrari dealership, which was very small at that time, but I really didn't have enough funding. And I was talking to David Rose, who had owned it, and it was downtown on Columbia Street then. And he was willing to put up the money. So eventually the building was purchased from the Chart House and converted to showrooms. And the space where I am at 7456 La Jolla Boulevard was a different property. That was the little movie theater. And it was converted into the service garage. And then we knocked a hole through the wall so the two buildings could be connected. And that's when Ferrari was started. And his wife was the one that wanted to name it symbolic. I thought La Jolla Ferrari was best. So anyway, when that was sold at around 1988, I moved into the space next door, was a service garage, the old movie theater, and eventually remodeled it into the condition and the look that it is now. And I did sort of a mid-century modern look, nice, clean, sharp, put the glass front in, moved a wall out in the rear to have an upper level, and then designed it. And it's just really clean and nice, and I think it's quite inviting to the people. And so you get a lot of local people coming in. I get young children coming in, and that's the part I enjoy, visiting with them and showing them the cars. But it took a while to get there. It was not the simplest.
Right.
There's a little story to how it became what it was.
Yeah. And I know it acts kind of like a museum as well. You have really great art pieces, like posters as well, kind of sprinkled throughout the showroom.
Yeah, I always enjoyed the automotive art of the 20s and 30s. There's a lot of movement and color in them. And they were mostly started in Paris by a group of artists. Some were lithographs, but these great artists were known for a variety of advertisements, and they did all the Monaco Grand Prix posters. So I have that original artwork on the wall. And then the cars that I'm selling are some of the rarest in the world. Now, I didn't know that as a youngster, but that's how the business grew. So we have maybe one of 6. We have a Porsche that's one of 108. We have a Maserati that's one of 26. And so the people don't get to see that car. And then there's sort of the art of the automobile. And that theme goes everywhere, whether it's the poster art or the shapes of the cars. And they're fascinated by it. They enjoy it. And they ask if it's a museum.
Yeah.
And so I say, no. But you're welcome.
For sale. But...
Things are for sale. I earn my living by buying and selling them.
Yeah. And you have a lot of clientele that's not only in La Jolla, but they're all over the world. What's some of your, if you can share, some of your favorite customers you've worked with or people that are collecting these cars?
Well, I kept the connections from the racing world. And I started, though, with local customers. But then it grew internationally. And so I've been to the Chandon family to buy a racing GT40 in France. I have good clients in England. I've I flew to Germany with Jerry Seinfeld to see the Reinhold Jost racing team, where Jerry bought some racing cars for his collection. It's been quite interesting. I've helped Bobby Rahal, our Indy 500 winner from the 80s, for 25 years with his collection. And I didn't know that it would grow into that. Mm-hmm. But now those are contacts. I went with my son and daughter and sold a rare Alfa Romeo to Nick Mason, the Pink Floyd drummer that has a large collection. And it just grew. And now they're all in my iPhone and in the database, and I get calls from them for car advice. So you never know where your passion and your study is going to lead you.
Yeah, and I'm sure when you started, you didn't think it would evolve to the legacy you've built and everything that you've accomplished up until now.
No, you have no idea as a youngster. And I think there's a circle that's come around here, and that is, I'm in Spain in 1974, and I take still photos of Niki Lauda in a Ferrari 312B in the pit lane. And I collected that in my photo archives. Well, here, 35 or 40 years later, that Ferrari's in the showroom for sale, and it sells for $4 million. You don't know that at 18, 19, or 20. You're working for almost nothing. You're thrilled to be there, but you just push yourself, and you love what you do, so it's not really hard work. You're tired at the end of the day because you've worked 10 hours, but you're still enjoying it, and here's this car, and you're selling it to someone. And I mean, one of the Ferraris we sold to Paolo Barilla Pasta. Wow. And then he gets the driver X, and they do a reunion, and I'm invited.
That's so exciting.
It's pretty, and then I pull out photos from the 70s that I took.
And I'm sure that's so special too, because like you said, it kind of brings everything full circle. And not many people have that experience of being there to take photos of the car and then kind of having it have its history and then finding its new owner.
Yes, sure. It's humbling in some way, but in the end, the common denominator is they're all enjoying the collector car hobby. Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about. Nothing else is in the way.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and kind of diving deep into your past. I know our viewers are going to be very excited to learn a little bit more about you and about the collections. Now, if someone wants to take a look at the showroom and stop by and even chat with you, how can they do that?
We're there Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5, Saturdays by appointment. They're welcome just to come in and look around at any time. And if I'm free, I'm happy to break away and chat with them. And I particularly love it when the youngsters come by. They can have their pictures taken. I can explain things to them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for watching Discover La Jolla.